is Father Jose's Journey to Hell, Purgatory, and Heaven.
The following is not a story coming out of the rumor mill. The priest whose testimony is given below is the pastor of a Catholic church in Florida. His testimony is on the website, which is linked to his former parish. Father Jose Maniangat says he died in a traffic accident in 1985 and was taken by his guardian angel to visit heaven, hell, and purgatory, and came back to life to continue his ministry as a priest. For more information on Father Jose's ministry, email address, and website, please see the description below this video. And now, here's the testimony of Father Jose. I was born on July 16, 1949 in Kerala, India, to my parents Jose and Teresa Maniangat. I am the eldest of 7 children: Jose, Mary, Teresa, Lisama, Zachariah, Velsa, and Tom. At the age of 14, I entered St. Mary's Minor Seminary in Thiruvalla and began my studies for the priesthood. 4 years later, I went to St. Joseph's Pontifical Major Seminary in Alway, Kerala to continue my priestly formation. After completing 7 years of philosophy and theology, I was ordained a priest on January 1, 1975 to serve as a missionary at the Diocese of Thiruvalla. In 1978, while teaching at the St. Thomas Minor Seminary in Bathory, I became an active member of the Charismatic Renewal Movement and began conducting charismatic retreats and conferences in Kerala. On Sunday, April 14, 1985, the Feast of the Divine Mercy, I was going to celebrate Mass at a mission church in the north part of Kerala when I had a fatal accident. I was riding a motorcycle when I was hit head-on by a jeep driven by a man who was intoxicated after a Hindu festival. I was rushed to the hospital about 35 miles away. On the way, my soul came out of my body and I experienced death. Immediately, I met my guardian angel. I saw my body and the people who were carrying me to the hospital. I heard them crying and praying for me. At this time, my angel told me, "I'm going to take you to heaven, and the Lord wants to meet you and talk with you." He also said that on the way, he wanted to show me hell and purgatory. First, the angel escorted me to hell. It was an awful sight. I saw Satan and the devils and the unquenchable fire of about 2,000 Fahrenheit degrees. Worms crawling, people screaming and fighting, others being tortured by demons. The angel told me that all of these sufferings were due to unrepented moral sins. Then I understood that there are 7 degrees of suffering, or levels, according to the number and kinds of mortal sins committed by their earthly lives. The souls looked very ugly, cruel, and horrific. It was a fearful experience. I saw people whom I knew, but I am not allowed to reveal their identities. The sins that convicted them were mainly abortion, homosexuality, euthanasia, hatefulness, unforgiveness, and sacrilege. The angel told me that if they had repented, they would have avoided hell and gone instead to purgatory. I also understood that some people who repent from these sins might be purified on earth through their sufferings. This way they can avoid purgatory and go straight to heaven. I was surprised when I saw in hell even priests and bishops, some of whom I've never expected to see. Many of them were there because they had misled the people with false teaching and bad example. After the visit to hell, my guardian angel escorted me to purgatory. Here, too, there are 7 degrees of suffering and unquenchable fire. But it was far less intense than hell, and there was neither quarreling nor fighting. The main suffering of these souls is their separation from God. Some of those who are in purgatory committed numerous mortal sins, but they were reconciled with God before their death. Even though these souls are suffering, they enjoy peace and the knowledge that one day they will see God face to face. I had the chance to communicate with the souls in purgatory. They asked me to pray for them and tell the people to pray for them as well so they can go to heaven quickly. When we pray for these souls, we receive their gratitude from their prayers, and once they enter heaven, their prayers become even more meritorious. It is difficult for me to describe how beautiful my guardian angel is. He is radiant and bright. He is my constant companion and helps me in all my ministries, especially my healing ministry. I experience his presence everywhere I go, and I'm grateful for his protection in my daily life. Next, my angel escorted me to heaven, passing through a big, dazzling white tunnel. I never experienced this much peace and joy in my life. Then immediately, the heaven opened up and I heard the most delightful music, which I never heard before. The angels were singing and praising God. I saw all the saints, especially Blessed Mother and Saint Joseph, and many dedicated holy bishops and priests who were shining like stars. And when I appeared before the Lord, Jesus told me, I want you to go back into the world. I want you to be an instrument of peace and healing to my people. You will walk in a foreign land and you will speak a foreign tongue. Everything is possible with you with my grace. After these words, the Blessed Mother told me, do whatever he tells you, and I will help you in your ministries. Words cannot express the beauty of heaven. There we find so much peace and happiness, which exceed 1,000,000 times our imagination. Our Lord is far more beautiful than any image can convey. His face is radiant and luminous and more beautiful than 1,000 rising suns. The pictures we see in the world are only a shadow of his magnificence. The Blessed Mother was next to Jesus. She was so beautiful and radiant. None of the images we see in this world can compare to her real beauty. Heaven is our real home, and we are all created to reach heaven and enjoy God forever. Then I came back to the world with my angel. While my body was still at the hospital, the doctor completed all examinations and I was pronounced dead. The cause of death was bleeding. My family was notified, and since they were far away, the hospital staff decided to move my dead body to the morgue. Because the hospital did not have air conditioners, they were concerned that the body would decompose quickly. As they were moving my dead body to the morgue, my soul came back to the body. I felt an excruciating pain because of so many wounds and broken bones. I began to scream, and then the people became frightened and ran away screaming. One of them approached the doctor and said, "The dead body is screaming." The doctor came to examine the body and found that I was alive. So he said, "Father is alive. It is a miracle. Take him back to the hospital." Now, back at the hospital, they gave me blood transfusions and I was taken to surgery to repair the broken bones. They worked on my lower jaw, ribs, pelvic bone, wrists, and right leg. After 2 months, I was released from the hospital, but my orthopedic doctor said that I would never walk again. I then said to him, "The Lord who gave me my life back and sent me back to the world will heal me." We were all praying for a miracle. Still, once at home with the cast removed, I was not able to move. But one day, while praying, I felt an extraordinary pain in my pelvic area. After a short while, the pain disappeared completely, and I heard a voice saying, "You are healed. Get up and walk." I felt the peace and healing power on my body. I immediately got up and walked. I praised and thanked God for the miracle. I reached my doctor with the news of my healing, and he was amazed. He said, "Your God is a true God. I must follow your God." The doctor was Hindu, and he asked me to teach him about our church. After studying the faith, I baptized him, and he became Catholic. Following the message from my guardian angel, I came to the United States on November 10th, 1986, as a missionary priest. First, I worked in the Diocese of Boise, Idaho from 1987 to 1989, and then became the Director of Prison Ministry in the Diocese of Orlando, Florida from 1989 to 1992. In 1992, I came to the Diocese of St. Augustine, where I was first assigned to St. Matthew's Parish in Jacksonville for 2 years. I was then appointed parochial vicar of Assumption Church from 1994 to 1999. In 1997, I was incardinated as a permanent member of the diocese. From June 1999 to June 2011, I was pastor of St. Mary's Mother of Mercy Catholic Church in McClenny, Florida. I also served as the Catholic chaplain for Florida State Prison in Stark Union Correctional Institution in Rayford and Northeast Florida State Hospital in McClenny. On July 1st, 2011, I was assigned to St. Catherine of Siena Catholic Church in Orange Park, Florida. I am also the diocesan spiritual director of the Legion of Mary. On the first Sunday of each month, I conduct a Eucharistic and a charismatic healing ministry at my current parish, St. Catherine of Siena Catholic Church in Orange Park, Florida. I have been invited to conduct the healing ministry in other major cities in the United States, including New York, Philadelphia, Washington, D.C., San Jose, Dallas, Chicago, Birmingham, Denver, Boise, Idaho Falls, Hawaii, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Poolsville, and many other countries. Ireland, Spain, Czech Republic, India, France, Portugal, Yugoslavia, Italy, Canada, Mexico, Cayman Island, and Ontario. Through this Eucharistic healing ministry, I have seen many people healed physically, spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. People with various diseases such as cancer, AIDS, arthritis, heart conditions, eye problems, emphysema, asthma, back pains, bad hearing, and many others have been healed completely. In addition, several times during the year, I conduct a special healing service for the healing of the family tree, in which the effects from ancestral sins are blocked and the person receives complete healing. Scripture says that the effects from family sins can linger around for 3 to 5 generations. Exodus chapter 34, verse 7. So in many cases, we need generational healing. Doctors and medicines do not help to heal certain sicknesses caused by our family tree. During the healing ministry, many people rest in the Spirit before the Blessed Sacrament, and some experience renewal of the soul and healing of the body. Father Jose is leaving St. Catherine's of Siena effective April 15, 2016. He is retiring from active parish duties to full-time healing ministry with the bishop's approval and permission. The bishop has allowed him to share his healing ministry with faithful Catholics throughout the world. He will have more freedom to travel and serve. In the meantime, Father Jose remains in the Jacksonville, Florida area. In his ministry today, Father Maniangat often stresses the need to pray for souls in purgatory. This is an act of fraternal charity. They are part of our family, the mystical body of Christ, he said. What goes around comes around, he added. Once they are in heaven, they will be saints, he said, and they can pray for us, and their prayers are powerful. Heaven shined like the sun and included millions of souls praising God. On his website, this statement appears in bold above the story of his out-of-body experience. Neither the Diocese of St. Augustine nor any other Catholic Church authorities have investigated, approved, or in any way endorsed the factual or theological contents of the Father Jose story. Some believe the story of his visit to the hereafter, others don't. I told my guardian angel, "No one's going to believe I saw these things," Father Maniangat said. My angel replied, "Don't worry about it. Many people refused to believe Jesus." Linda Chataway of Orange Park is a believer. She worked with Father Maniangat as a parish secretary and now maintains his website. It's a private revelation, so it's up to you if you want to believe it or not, she said. I do, because I've seen the fruits of his ministry, both miraculous healings and, more importantly, many people coming to the faith. Chataway said Father Maniangat was faithful to church authorities and not only talks the talk, but walks the walk. Father tells people to pray, fast, and go to confession, he said. He does all these things himself. Jennifer Carbajal of Middleburg, Florida, first began attending Father Maniangat's monthly healing masses a decade ago. She too has witnessed conversions and healings, as well as a revival of her faith. Before, I was living my life for myself, Carbajal told OSV. Now I want to live every day for Jesus. The humble, down-to-earth priest gives all the glory to Jesus, she added, and wants to do all he can to bring people to heaven. Finally, if you wish to meet Father Jose, try asking your local pastor to invite Father Jose to your parish. Or you may periodically visit Father Jose's website for any future Eucharistic healing masses.
Good morning. This is a Trinity special. On set with us this morning is Father Ian Taylor and a very special guest, Father Joseph Maniangat. And Father Maniangat has a very profound testimony to give us today. And I'm sure many of us will be tremendously moved by his testimony, and we really invite you to stay on with us because we really promised that this is going to be a faith-moving experience this morning. So welcome to the program. Welcome, Father.
Thank
and Father, I don't want to even start the interview myself without just going straight into you and asking, could you tell us a little bit about your experience and what brings you to Trinidad at this time?
I came to Trinidad mainly the ministry to Jesus portion. That's the main reason. The first time in Trinidad, and so far I enjoyed very much. A few hours time, So God has a plan. I never thought in my life, but God has a plan to come here, to give this testimony, to convert many people, so they can understand the truth and they can come into the right path.
Yes, and you have a healing ministry that's based in the United States, and I know you have been a priest for the last 37 years, and your ministry has been in the U.S. from the last 25 years.
25 years. This is my jubilee year.
Your jubilee year. Yeah, it's your jubilee year. Can you tell us what led to the healing ministry? What was your experience that led to the healing ministry, and what's your testimony?
I want to thank God. Not I'm worthy of this ministry, but God, He selected me. And He using me not because I'm greater than anybody, but I really thank Him. So I'm useful to many people, alleviate their pain, and a lot of pain. People have a lot of pain, and also suffering, spiritually and mentally, emotionally, physically, and family tree. A lot of suffering I find, and especially people calling around the world, every continent. And I have a healing ministry every first Saturday of the month in my church, St. Catherine of Siena, Forest Park, Florida. And first Saturday, every first Saturday, 5 p.m. And people coming from different parts of the state and different countries, and they experience the healing power of God. And many healing testimonies are in my website, physical, mental, emotional healing, and also the people have problem with, impotency, they cannot get pregnant, and many cases God healed. There are many testimonies also in the website too.
Father, I know your testimony is very much over the website, but can you tell us a little bit, because I know you were in an accident, and this led to an entire experience in your life. Could you tell us a little bit about
how
that?
I came to the healing ministry.
How you came into...
This happened 1985, April 14th. That was a Divine Mercy Sunday. And that was a day of a Hindu festival. And the Hindu festival, they celebrate. And I was going to my second mass afternoon. motorcycle was my transportation. So the man was drunk.
So you're on a motorbike.
So that was transportation. So going to the mass, then the man who was drunk after the Hindu festival celebrating, and he hit my motorcycle, head-on collision, and knocked me down. And you can see my all this crap here. That's part of the accident, and also my two wrists broken due to the accident, and my lower jaw, and 3 ribs and pelvic bone, my legs, 2 places broken.
So your legs, your wrists, your head, well, I can see a lot of the scarring there still. Your ribs, your pelvic bone, and so were broken.
And so many vein cut, bleeding, on the way to bleeding. So on the way to the hospital, my soul came out. Then I saw my dead body. Then I saw the guardian angel. First time I see my guardian angel. I believe in the guardian angel, but I see him face to face. So guardian angel, he told me, the Lord wants to speak to you. Jesus, no. And he told me that, come with me. So I go with the angel. And then I was told, go to the hell. So he escorted to the hell. And it's a vast, wide open. There are trillions of people. I was shocked.
Trillions of people.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was shocked that I asked the angel, Jesus came and died for these people. Why these people are here? Then the angel told me, because their choice. He came, opened the gate, he showed the way, because he said, I am the way, the truth, and life, and follow the commandments, and they disobey. So it's a choice. So God has helped us, because we have freedom to do what we want. So they went up in the hell.
And you actually saw?
I saw.
You saw hell?
Yeah. Yeah, so the hell and the people suffering, and the heat, the suffering, Jesus said in the Bible, there is a fire and unquenchable fire, and also the worms. And I experienced that all there in the purgatory, and the fighting, quarrel,
and they
screaming, all this noise is so hard to hear, that all the noises. And all the souls like a monster, the figure, very terrifying, the figure. And I saw that the people that look like, when you say Halloween, when I came to America, I see the children go with a mask.
Like Halloween time.
That mask look like exactly look what I saw in the hell. Look like satanic face, witches and skeletons and all. I don't know why the people. I said, don't do that. This is really satanic. So I told many people, and many people they stopped. Halloween, that he was the saint, but he was Satan.
So you were taken by your guardian angel.
Yeah, he escorted me to there.
To hell. Yeah.
And a lot of fear and horror and fighting, and so I can't explain the horror there.
And that is
beyond our imagination.
Because the teaching is that hell is eternity. So
eternity.
It's forever.
And when you get there, nobody, even thousands of masses or Hail Mary don't go to heaven. No. The eternity there. And also I talk about 7 levels of suffering there. 7 degree of suffering. For example, you go to doctor's office, how is your pain level? 1 to 10. So their level of suffering is severe. How many mortal sin they committed. So mortal sin after mortal sin committing, so degree of suffering is great. That's 7 levels talking about.
So there are 7 levels of
suffering.
Suffering in hell.
In the hell.
And then what?
Then the angel let's go to the purgatory.
The purgatory.
Yeah, some people don't believe in the purgatory, but that's reality.
And that's definitely a Catholic teaching about purgatory.
But that's reality. The Catholic teaching or not, that's reality.
Yes.
Believe or not, that's purgatory there. There's a logic in that. People, they committed mortal sins. The last moment, he was a greater sinner. The last moment, repent. So God never put the person to the hell, but they cannot go to heaven directly because there's a lot of stain, a lot of purification that the person needs. That's where the place of purification, purgatory. There are also trillions of people there. And they are asking our mercy, pray for them. So we need to. So
what were the people when you saw what were the people like in purgatory? What were their state?
They are not like people in the hell. they're sad, they're suffering. There's no fighting, there's no horror, but they have the hope. One day they will be in heaven. So they're asking me to pray for them, and they asked me to tell the people to pray for them. So wherever I go, I tell the people, please pray for the souls in purgatory. So when you pray, they can go to heaven early, and then what happens when they get to heaven? They will become saints. People think that only Pope canonized the Holy Saint, but there are many uncanonized. God canonized. All the people enter the heaven, all are saints. And they said, when we get to heaven, and we pray for you, the gratitude. So their prayer is more powerful because the saints interceding to God. So it's good for us to pray for them.
So when we pray for the souls in purgatory and they get to heaven, they in turn pray for us and they intercede for us.
So it's a good investment, no? I mean, it's nice.
A good investment. I like
Good way of putting it. A good way to put it. Yes, yes.
Good
Good
investment.
investment.
It's a
Yeah.
good investment.
Yeah,
And they help us, and they will be with us. So that's one of the joyful thing I find, that I pray for souls in purgatory every day. Whenever I don't have a designated mass for somebody, I offer the mass for the souls in purgatory.
Okay.
If a double mass or a second mass comes, and I offer the souls in purgatory. So I can save many souls there, and they all, when we die, they come and escort us to the heaven. That's it.
Okay. Well, that's beautiful.
That's the word.
And then
Then the angel lead to the heaven, going through a big tunnel. A tunnel lights, dazzling white and beautiful and peaceful, and go into tunnel, and heaven open, then hear the music. That music, that orchestra in the world, imagine an orchestra, you attended, how much you enjoy. I like music. And the orchestra, imagine a trillion time melodious, beautiful, heavenly music. So I hear the music, and the angel escort before the Lord. The Lord looked at me and said, I have a mission for you. In your second life,
what did the Lord look like?
the picture of Jesus, we find the beautiful picture of Jesus. Imagine 1,000 sun rising, so radiant, so beautiful. No artist cannot, nobody can picture that. Nobody can draw that. No intellect, can imagine the beauty of God. So I said more than 1,000 sun rising. That's beauty and radiant. And Blessed Mother too. She was right there.
Oh, Blessed Mother
Right
would
there.
say.
Yeah.
Right.
So God told me, in your second life you work in a foreign land, you speak in a foreign tongue. I don't speak English in India. I learn English now.
Okay.
So, and also said, in your second life, you are my instrument of peace and health to my people. Peace and health. So then Blessed Mother told me, listen, do whatever he tells you. I am your help. So I'll be with you in your ministry all the time. The angel told me, let's go. So I came back to the world. Then my body is already in the...
So then the angel. But before we get back to that, tell me a little bit about your guardian angel. What's
The guardian angel is so... I heard about when I was young, we had guardian angel.
Yeah, because we always pray angel of God.
Angel of
pray
God,
all
pray,
the time.
yeah. The angel, because my understanding through the angels, the moment of conception until natural death, the angel with us. Angel with us. Until death, Angel
What
with
was
us.
your angel like?
Angel is so bright and beautiful, radiant. The beauty we cannot imagine, the beautiful, the beauty, and also very calm, kind, and also guarding us. Guarding us. That's a guardian angel.
So then your angel escorted you back. What in the meantime, if I can ask, what was happening to your body?
Body, let's not talk about that. So they take the body at the hospital, and they didn't know it's dead or not. So doctor came and examined and pronounced dead.
So you were pronounced dead.
Yeah. My parents, way back, they're the south of my state. I'm the north of state. So there's no, like interstate, or so they get little time to get there. But there's no air conditioning. So they wanted to put my body to mortuary.
They wanted to take you to the mortuary.
So they were taking the body. So on the way to the mortuary, before get inside, my soul came to the body. My soul came to the body, then imagine. the pain, all broken bones, tremendous pain, horrendous pain. I was screaming with the pain, screaming. Imagine people carrying the dead body screaming. So they were screaming and left the body and run away.
So everybody was scared.
They're scared. They're
Yes,
scared.
I would imagine. Yeah. Yes.
So one person went to doctor, that dead body screaming. That is the Father Joseph, that body screaming. So the doctor hurried and came and examined. He got the pulse. Oh, Father's alive. Take him back to hospital, in the surgical room. The people waiting for the mass, they cared about the story. They all came to the hospital. There's no blood bank, so they give blood. So they give blood, because blood was gone, and all surgery or did. And I was 2 months in the hospital. And the doctor, you can go home, but your pelvic bone, is still not in order. So you'll be in a wheelchair. You can't walk because you cannot correct it. You cannot work on that. So I told the doctor, he was a Hindu doctor. I told the doctor, my God sent me with a mission. So I know he will go and heal me. Then doctor said, your God can heal you, but we cannot. Maybe your God can heal you. So I went home and praying novena, prayers. And one day, in my bed, praying, my parents went to the church praying for me. And a tremendous pain, horrendous pain in my pelvic area. I was screaming with the pain. I would say, help me, Mom, help me, bless mother. Then I hear the voice, you're okay, get up and walk. And I believed it. And I walked from the bed. I went to doctor seeing me, surprised to see me. The man supposed in a wheelchair is walking. And the Hindu doctor, he said, I believe in your God. I want to become Catholic.
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yes.
and he became Catholic.
And he became a Catholic.
But he
afterwards.
dead now. He was told that time
Yes,
he dead.
yes.
He's no more living.
Yeah.
But that was a great miracle happened.
Yes.
My life is a miracle, but a great miracle happened through my ministry. First miracle.
Father, when we met earlier this morning, something you said I found very profound. And you said the words of St. Paul, I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. I know...
Like St. Paul said, after my experience, I'm totally different. I'm a priest and do everything, priest duty, but my zeal different, my attitude is different. Like I said before, I believe, like St. Paul said, I live but no longer I. Christ lives in me. So he used my body. He touched the people. I'm not touching the people. He used my heart to touch people. He is healing, not me.
So now you have given as all priests,
Yeah.
but
Totally.
that God just uses you totally, and you now have a healing ministry.
Yeah, I was talking to Ian on the way. Our hands, Jesus using our hands, our feet to reach out the people, our heart to touch the people, compassion to them, our tongue to direct them, guide them. We're talking on the way to Far Ian.
Yes.
That's why I feel that way.
Yeah. So your entire
Totally.
body you see as now being Christ
Christ
uses
uses.
your body because he's brought you back for
Yeah.
this reason as well.
Especially after that experience, I had a great feeling, and I know he's doing that. He's using me. Every priest now, because God select all priests now. God used them to use his ministry. Not like me alone. I can experience like that, but all priests, even if I told him he's going around the place, around the world, and preaching and helping people, he's doing the work of Jesus, the same work. He's using him too. And I believe that. We have to understand our dignity, understand our mission. We are working for Jesus, not for us. Not for, I tell the people all these years, I never seek my glory. I want the glory to God. I want glory to him, because all this happened because of his blessing.
And Father, as well, I think what's very profound that Father said is that he actually saw hell, and we're living in a society where people do not believe
That's a good point, Sandy. Actually, that's why, it's good that he's in Trinidad, because we're becoming a very materialistic society, and secularism is kicking in, as our previous bishop had said, and it's evident every day. So people are distancing themselves more and more from the other life and from the supernatural. So God is being distanced from their lives. So when you have somebody who's been there,
yes,
you see, as they like to say, been there, done that. He's been there and seen that.
Yes.
So he knows the real, and he's seen real people there. I think, when the church went through Vatican II, after that we had a turn in the way we preached. So what happened? You had the kind of preaching about heaven and hell and sin and so on. After that, that sort of went down. So the all-encompassing love of God, which there is,
yes.
but the justice of God sort of went through the back door.
Right.
Now people need to understand again that there are consequences for their actions.
Yes.
And when you have someone who's come back to see the consequences, to relate the consequences that he's seen, a man like him becomes very important.
Yes, and I think also that is important, and then also understanding purgatory, I think,
Yes.
because a lot of Catholics even
Yeah.
don't understand the concept of purgatory.
Because of the Protestant influence.
Yes.
The Protestant people know there's no purgatory. So hearing that, because Protestant influence, because my spouse may be a non-Catholic, so they believe that there's no purgatory,
Yes.
even Catholics.
But biblically, purgatory is implied. In Revelations 21:27, it says that nothing defiled can enter into heaven.
Yes.
So if you die, even if you've made a decision for the Lord and you've lived and you've even repented, there's still lots of things that we have not fully repented of. Even when people go to confession to a priest, how much remorse do you really have about what you've done? You're happy to get off the hook, so you go to confession. So we often make an imperfect confession, an imperfect contrition. So all of that has to be expiated, as they say. Satisfaction has to be made for that, and purgatory is such a place. And then in 1 Corinthians 3 verse 15, it tells us that if a man's work is lost, is burnt up, the man himself might be saved, but as through fire. And the church sees in that a hint towards purgatory as well. So people don't realize that purgatory is a place where there is suffering, and there are also levels in purgatory, depending on how much purification you need. And so they don't realize that it's a painful place. It's not like heaven, that God is not there as yet. You know that you're going up and that you're not going down, but you're still not there. So there's that yearning for God, but not being able to attain it.
Yes.
So there's also that pain in purgatory.
Yes. But Father, you've gone on now and you have a tremendous healing ministry.
Yes.
And could you tell us a little bit about healing? Because a lot of times when we think of healing, we think of just a physical healing.
Yeah.
And I know as well that there are different types of healing, and which we all should.
I think that's a good question.
Avail
People
ourselves
don't understand. People think about, Father Joseph healing ministry. They think mainly the physical, some ache and pain or cancer people. I get a lot of cancer people, many different kinds, and back pain, arthritis, AIDS, and all types of people come. But I always tell the people, number one is the spiritual healing, because if you know that, Mark chapter 2, 1 to the following verse, we know Jesus talking about the parable. No, it's not parable. It's a real story. It's the paralytic man, poor people carrying the paralytic man, and they could not come close to Jesus, so they cut the roof and put the man before him. What Jesus said first?
Your sins are forgiven.
Son, your sins are forgiven. So he started from the spiritual healing. Then he said, pick up your mat and go home. So he concerned that spirit. That's why Jesus came. Jesus' mission is healing. He came to this world to heal. The salvation is a healing. So that
entire spiritual, and also there's a lot of generational healing.
Yeah.
So
I do. I get a message from Brother Mother. So she always direct me and guide me, because she told, I'm your guide, I'm your helper. So people ask, when is your generation healing mass? I said, I don't know. Why? I said, I get a message for that. I did one time, last March. The next people, when is the next one? I said, I don't know. When I get a message, I tell you. It is the website. Next to the General Healing Mass. So next month, August 4th is a deliverance and healing. So she told me to deliverance and healing. People need a lot of deliverance now. People are obsession, people are possession, the oppression, all kind of satanic work there. So next one is deliverance. And sometimes exorcism prayers I do. I don't do an exorcist. I don't know acting as an exorcist.
Yes.
But exorcism prayers, we
Yes,
can do that.
yes, yeah. So you do the exorcism. So a lot of it, so
And-
healing can be physical, it can be spiritual,
Spiritual.
it can be generational,
Generational,
mental healing as
Yeah,
well.
Emotional, yes.
Emotional
yeah, it
healings.
is the Bible very clear about that. The sins of the parents can affect to 3 to 5 generation. It's very clear in the Bible. So it's very clear. We can understand when you go to a doctor's office. There's a form you have to fill up. Then you're asking, do you have history of diabetes in your family, your parents, history of heart problem, history of cancer. See, that means generation passing. Even it's a sickness. So the same way, many effects because of generational problem.
Sandy, one other thing, Father, about the spiritual healing he mentioned, he connects repentance to it. You see, and he was talking to me earlier when he arrived, only last night. He said to me, people don't understand that mortal sin has serious consequences. So if you die in mortal sin, unrepentant, you will go to hell. And they don't realize this. My little sister was saying to me also, she said, well, I know many of my friends, she says, might be just living together in sin, fornication, and they don't realize that this can land you up in hell. So I think this generation needs to understand that sin is real, mortal sin can land you up in hell. Or if you get a chance to repent just before, you might still end up in purgatory, and that's not too pleasant a place either.
Yes, yes.
And my story, I said one unrepentant mortal sin lead to the hell. That's
One
not
Hear that?
unrepentant mortal sin
unrepentant mortal sin.
can lead to hell.
Lead you to hell. Imagine that.
That came from the angel. The angel told me. It's not. I didn't find that. I didn't make that. God told me one unrepentant sin lead to the hell for eternity.
For eternity.
So-
Imagine that.
So, fathers, when we look at our land, what is the message of hope? What can we do? Where do you see us?
Number one, you got to pray for them. They are not understanding what they're doing.
True.
Yes.
Ignorant or Satan blocking, and their eyes closed, and they're not understanding. So we need to pray and fast and pray for our young generation and people, and give it this kind of Jesus explosion. It's a wonderful ministry, and any other retreat,
Right.
and all this help to change these people.
Yes, it opens people's eyes. You see, retreats, we have lots of retreats here in Trinidad. And those things help all people to realize that it's not only this world that exists, but there's a world more permanent than this one, and that we're headed there.
Yes.
But where we go there is going to be determined by how we live here.
Yes.
So if you say hope, that's one of the hopes. As he says, retreats, conventions, spiritual conventions, people reading God's word, people praying, and people praying for others too, that their eyes might be opened.
Healing ministry.
Healing ministries, that's right. They see the power of God, and then they can discover the God of power. These things are necessary. And of course, Trinidad, with the present crime situation and so on, a lot of prayer needs to be made. I was just speaking with a magistrate just a moment ago, and she's dealing with the family court, and she was telling me, she was discovered from moving from the civil court to the family court, that the problem really is in the family.
Yes.
You see? So we have to work with the families.
Yes. And Father's website. Father, you could tell us a little bit about your website before we close the program a little bit.
Yeah,
because
I
know-
have a website so that people can know. People can talk to me all the time. People around the world. So that's the reason I have divine message to do a website so that people can see and they can read and also reach around the world.
What is the website, Father?
And we have-
The name of the website is Father Maniyangat healingministry.com.
Yes. And it's right here. It's very, very, very easy to pull up. Father's website is here. And one of the really good things about the website is that you can do prayer requests on the website.
Yeah, there's prayer, click
as
the prayer,
well.
click
Yeah.
the prayer. I put prayer request.
Yeah, you can.
And testimonies, prayer answered.
Yes.
And all the my story in different languages, different language, English, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and
Portuguese.
Vietnamese. And there are many others. I didn't put all of them.
Yes, and also it can take you to videos as well.
YouTube,
Yeah.
yeah.
They can take you through to
And
videos.
also there's a EWTN Father Joseph
There's a
Mary.
EWTN video as well.
EWTN.
Yes, where
Father Joseph Mary.
Father
the one,
Joseph
and
Mary
Joseph
does
Mary,
the
and
website.
he did a nice
Yes.
talk about my ministry.
Very good.
All stories there.
Yes.
It's a nice talk about it.
Yes, so we can learn a lot more about Father, on his website. He has an excellent website.
And prayer too. In prayer, so you can put all prayers, and I print out and put in the prayer box, and they are in the Blessed Sacrament 24 Perpetual Adoration Chapel, and there, and I pray for the people.
Well, Father Joseph and Father Ian, thank you so very much for being on the program, and thank you for gracing our country with your presence and your message of healing and God and testimony to us. I'm sure that it will go far in really converting many of us.
I wanted to thank him because he's the one who invited me. He became an instrument of that, and thank you for that, so that this is message through television, people watching, they open the hearts and they receive more blessing.
Yes, and to all our viewers, thank you for viewing. You were looking at Father Jose Maniangat and Father Joseph Maniangat and Father Ian Taylor.
God bless you.
A reading from the book of the